us in the Royal Rant. I'm Ryan,
I'm Sim.
and we have a special guest for you, Mr. Daryl Evans. You know him from the Miracle on Manchester. You know him from broadcasting for the Kings since I think 1998. You may remember him from playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Washington Capitals, and the LA Kings. And if you follow his Instagram, you may notice that he just runs all across North America, taking pictures of this great continent, Canada and the United States. So thanks, Daryl. First things first, what do you think about that game one? Pretty boring, huh?
Yeah, it was a sleeper. I was between the benches, so not a lot going on. But yeah, you know what? Playoff hockey is always something special. And last night was, if it's any indication as to what to expect the rest of the series, boy, we're in for a good one.
Yeah, hold on your hats. We were talking earlier that I think if someone would have told me, like, hey, I'm not going to tell you who wins, but the final score of game one is 6-5, I would have thought, well, that's Edmonton with the six, not the Kings, right?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
Although the Kings are a different team, there's no doubt they're a different team. I think it would be natural though to definitely side with them and outscoring the Kings. And it reminds me like back in our day when we beat the Oilers 6-5, and that series, like Edmonton, I think they set the record that year for the most goals, and yet in the series of 5 games, we won 6-5, we won 10-8. We won 7-4, and they won the 2-3-2 game. So it was ironic that we won the high scoring games and they won the tight ones.
Yeah, I think that's the highest scoring 5 game series, I think, in NHL
It was right up there.
history.
I know that game one, the 18 goals combined, is the highest amount of goals combined by two teams in a playoff game. 18 goals.
Yeah, and I
Very
think
very tight defensive game.
yeah, I think Jim Fox likes to joke about how that's the only game in NHL history that featured no goalies. I think he said, but I think that still stands as like the greatest upset in terms of regular season disparity because the Kings finished 48 points behind the Oilers that season, and
Yeah, no,
I don't think
yeah.
that's happened anything close to that since then.
No, and I think one of the things that favored it was that it was a 5 game series. I think had it been a 7 game series, and that rule quickly changed right after that playoff year. And I think had again being a long series, they probably would have been able to recover from it. But I think because of the shock, the stun that they went through in game one, and then again in game three, it was tough. And we were a team that had nothing to lose and everything to gain, and but I think at the end of the day, they became the winners, from the series because eventually they went on to win some cups in the next few years. So it was one step backwards with a few steps forwards coming right after it, but we definitely savored that moment for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's funny because we'll see that clip of the game-winning goal so often. I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
people that kind of think that that was the game that ousted the Oilers. I don't think they realized that you guys lost game four and you had to go to Edmonton and win game five there, which is also really impressive, you know?
Yeah, it was impressive, and both teams flew on the same plane after Game 4 to go to Edmonton for Game 5. I mean, it was the quietest flight we've ever been on, but we won 2 games on the road, and in that series game, the first game, and then obviously the last game. But yeah, it was a roller coaster of a series. It was just up and down, all kinds of goals being scored, and incredible moments, and unsung heroes and things like that. And like I said, there was a lot of lessons to be learned from it, especially from the Oilers side, and they definitely took advantage of it in the years to come. I think that really helped them grow as a team moving forward.
Yeah, they finally got through the Islanders. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's funny, I guess you probably don't realize it when you're playing in those games, but these playoff series just become these epic things that just people talk about for decades and decades.
Mhm.
We'll still be talking about this, I don't know, 20 years from now, probably the Miracle on Manchester or maybe this game one from last night. It's a great time of year if you love hockey like we do.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. I mean, it's you can sit there and the regular season plays itself out the way it does, and the way teams play against each other. But once it becomes playoff hockey, it's just the energy, like the energy in the building. That's not even from the player standpoint. The crowd was all wired up. We had a group of harmonica players,
I was gonna
and
mention that. Yeah.
then the people ended up singing,
Yeah.
singing the anthem, and we haven't heard that in that building, and it was just it was magical, and it created quite an environment, and again, we all know what happened through the course of the game. It was very entertaining. It had its its ups and downs, but it was definitely one game that people would, if you hadn't seen hockey before, that would definitely pull you in and make you a fan for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, you could feel the excitement from the crowd at home when they were singing the national anthem. I really got pumped up for it. It's like, man, it's like I was feeling like I was, at crypto. It was
Yeah, and
really
you know
cool.
what? You talk to some of the fans today that came around to practice and that, and they were talking about how exhausted they were, from the
Yeah.
game last night. They said we didn't even play it. We just the emotions of it, going up and down. So, I think that's speaks of our fan base, like, and I mean hockey clear across the globe that they embrace their teams. They become invested in their teams, and they live the moments and the peaks and valleys, the highs and lows, and from our standpoint, whether it be a broadcaster or a fan, there's nothing you can do. Like the players, they can make some alterations and, be part of the difference on the ice. But when you're sitting on the outside watching and you're kind of, you're handcuffed a little bit and, you've just got to hope that your team finds a way. And for the Kings fans last night, they found a way. And I think that speaks to the character of the team and a difference from the way this team was maybe in the last 3 years against the Oilers. Maybe that team wouldn't have been able to respond and rebound the way
Yeah.
they did in last night's game.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that third period, my blood pressure was just like I could tell. Like if I was at the doctor's office, they would have
I started the
gave
game
me a
on. I had a full
prescription.
head of hair like you. Now look at me.
Yeah, I just was sitting there. I thought, I don't think I can handle an overtime here. So
No, me neither.
very
No.
relieved when Trevor Moore made that great pay to enter the
Yeah.
zone and put on the brakes and find Deneau trailing, and Fogle goes to the net and does a kind of a giant karate jump in the air from screen
Yeah.
Skinner, and that thing flops over the goal line, and that was
Do you,
amazing.
Daryl, do you ever remember seeing a goal like that where a guy had to jump out of the way and it go through his legs and then over the goalie?
Well, it seemed like it happened in slow motion, and
Yeah.
just prior to that, after Edmonton had tied at 5-5, and then Arvidsson stole the puck in the King zone. And, of course, you've got the goalie at that time, you want to get into his head, so you throw everything in at the net. Arvidsson did that, and fortunately enough, Kemper was able to make the save. And I was saying, kind of like in the same breath, that, there's 53.8 seconds left here in the game. I said the Kings have to find a way to get out of this 53.8 seconds, get into the locker room, regroup, and then, start up again in overtime. Next thing you know, I see Trevor Moore flying by me at center ice there, and, the play comes, and then like he was flying and then the play just happened in slow motion. Like you see Fogle going up in the air and the shot, I don't even know if it still hit the back of the net yet. It just seemed like, it was just rolling over and over and over. And, it made its way in. And of course the place went crazy after that, but you just never know, and that, for young kids, put the puck, shoot it at the net and anything
Yeah.
can happen. And that was a great example of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Oilers were buzzing there, and for a second it felt like they might win it in regulation. Which
Mm.
would
Yeah,
be
Connor McDavid came to the bench after tying the game, and I mean he was on cloud nine, and he was just wired for sound going down that bench, pumping everybody up, screaming at him, and all that. And then within 30 seconds, all of a sudden, that it was just like somebody took the air out of the balloon. It's just
Yeah.
like just it deflated them. So it's again the emotions of the game, from one moment to the next.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of. I was thinking about it this morning. It's kind of like a glass half full, glass half empty situation. You're kind of like, well, glass half full. David has 4 points, and you still beat the Oilers, right?
Yep.
Draisaitl scores also. Their big duo. On the other hand, you cough up that lead, which is not really the Kings hockey you've been used to seeing these, last several seasons,
Yeah.
where it's a lockdown, situation, especially when they score 3 or more goals. I forget
Yep.
what the record is, but they're pretty much lock it away in the bank vault, when they score 3 goals, and to have that happen. So I guess it's good that they can, I guess it's showing that they can win a different type of game, which can help them in the playoffs, because it's a different animal, like you were mentioning, and being able to do that, hopefully it will give them some confidence. If they're down, that they can maybe come back.
Yeah, I think that's what management tried to address over the last few years. I remember when they made the deal, they acquired Kevin Fiala, and he was a difference maker. And then Quentin Byfield's becoming a difference maker. Kempe's already there. Kopitar, we know what he's capable of doing. Deneau. Uh, and then Kuzmenko, getting him at the deadline. A right-handed shot for a guy to be able to play the bumper on the power play after Gabe Velarde left, after Arvidsson left. So they had a void there, and those two players have been magical. They're puck possession guys, and what it does is it spreads the lineup out. There's depth now throughout the lineup. It's just not like, all right, they're going to get scoring. If the Kings get scoring, it's coming from these two lines. It can come, basically from all four, but let's say from the top three lines for sure now. And I think they match up with anybody. A little bit more of an offensive flair from back in the blue line. With Clark now starting to emerge a little bit. Jordan Spence, I know he didn't get a lot of ice time last night, but very capable of making plays and being creative offensively. So I think they have a trust in the style that they're playing. Jim Hiller at the beginning of the year wanted to install more of a aggressive type of team, attack off the rush. And the Kings are that now. They can score off the rush. Before they were more of a dump and chase type of team,
Yeah.
but now they'll put you on your toes. They'll catch you in transition and they'll attack you. So I think they spend more time now attacking than they do defending, and that speaks to why you see a different style of hockey and why they're scoring more goals than they have in the past number of years.
Yeah, you mentioned Byfield.
Yeah.
I thought he showed a lot of poise on that goal that he scored, because
Yeah.
he brought the puck down with his glove to his stick, took the time to shoot it off with Skinner's back. And I thought, wow, maybe he wouldn't have done that a couple of years ago. Maybe he
Yeah,
did or
a couple of years ago, he might have just banged it towards the net, but he had the presence of mind to take a look, like as he was, touching the puck with his glove, he's looking up to see exactly where Skinner was. So, you see him coming back, and okay, there's a little bit of a daylight there. Of course, you got to get a little bit of luck in something like that, but you got to make the play first, and he made the play, and he's definitely a lot more relaxed and confident in the plays that he's making. And he makes the matchup against the Oilers more challenging for them. They've got the big 1-2 punch, of course. And then Nugent Hopkins throw him up the middle of the ice. Henrique, they've got a lot of depth there. But now with the Kings, Kopitar, Byfield, Deneau, and even Sammy Helenius has done a great job. And I know last night was only his first playoff game, but he understands his role. He's got a player with length, very responsible. And I think as the series goes on, you're going to see his role kind of show a little bit more.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Kuzmenko. I mean, he's been so good, and do you think he's thriving so much? Just he matches up so well with Kopitar and Kempe, or he's gotten this opportunity and he's just running with it, and he seems like a really confident player, and he also seems to just have a knack of knowing. He does like stuff that's unexpected but not dangerous, if that makes sense. I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think on the acquisition of Kuzmenko, I mean, you go back a couple of years ago with Vancouver when he scored 39 goals. A guy doesn't score 39 goals by mistake in the
Yeah.
NHL. He's
Mm.
got to have something there. Never had a chance to practice with the Kings before he played his first two games. He played St. Louis and Vegas back to back the first weekend. And there were some plays there. Of course, there's no chemistry, with Kopitar and Kempe because, they hadn't even made a pass with each other other than the warm up. And I think it was, I mean, I know the Kings as a team, they've done a great job at embracing newcomers. Regardless if it's the beginning of the season or trade through the season. And Kempe and Kopitar are both such predictable players, very easy to play with. So with Kuzmenko coming in, he was allowed to play to his strength. And I think they made it real clear as to why they acquired him and what they expected of him.
Yeah.
So one thing that they got that I don't think they expected to get was how responsible he was in playing a 200-foot game.
Yeah.
So he obviously did his homework on the team, as the trade went through, and understood that if I'm going to excel on this team, and if I want to get ice time and I want to continue to keep playing with the big boys, I've got to play the way that they play. And he's been relentless on the back check. And now we've seen the offensive part of his game just start to evolve. He's having a lot of fun. He's got constantly got a smile on his face. And the Kings, he's looking when they get him. Of course, there's always a gamble when you bring a new guy in. How's he going to fit? Well, you get a guy that's on the end of a contract, so you're going to get him his best. He's auditioning, and from the standpoint from Kuzmenko, he potentially comes to a team and he goes, "All right, this team's got a chance.
Mhm.
I've got a chance to, get some playoff hockey in. Never played any playoff hockey before. Play on the big stage, and kind of, you know, strengthen his case as he becomes a free agent at the end of the year. So it's a win-win for both sides. But it's great to see what he's been able to do, and more importantly, the fun that he's having. It's always nice to see a guy come and smile at the rink.
Yeah.
Not too often you see that all the time, especially for a guy who's just been traded. Sometimes to get settled in, it takes a while, but he's been great for not only his teammates. I know the coaches have liked the way he's handled himself, and from our standpoint in the media, he's been great with us as well. Very conversational.
Well, we know what happens when you get a talented European away from John Tortorella. You're running around with the cup. We saw that in 2014 with our friend Marian Gabrick. So maybe that'll happen again. That would be great. So obviously, Daryl, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your suits. Okay. Now I know people have told me Daryl Evans is going to be on. You got to ask about the suits. Now
Yeah,
I've seen footage of
everyone
you
said
where you used to wear more traditional suits, almost boring Jim Fox style suits, and then something changed. What happened? What led to that change?
Well, I mean, I remember growing up, we never had a lot of money. So I remember when I did get my first suit and it was a three-piece suit, I really cherished that. But I think as I turned pro, uh, you know, you get some suits. And then I remember when the first person that I went to started to make my suits and starting to look at cloths. And I noticed some of the cloths that had a little bit of a shine to them. I kind of took a liking to, and it was something just a little bit different as opposed to the traditional, suits, checks and pinstripes and things like that. So I think it's slowly evolved from there, and I think now as time has gone by for the last number of years, and a lot of people have said it to me that your suits kind of they bring out your personality. Like
Mhm.
I'm an energetic, lively, type of person, and they said, your suits kind of speak who you are. And I kind of lean with them. I go, yeah, it kind of makes sense in what they're saying. But I love different things, um, and I'm not necessarily wearing them to for attention or anything like that. I just like the look, and that's why I do it. So, and now when I go and make suit or get my suits made, I have a lot of fun being part of the cloth selection, and the young lady that makes them for me, in designing what we're going to try to piece together. She does a great job at throwing me different examples and samples of what she's got in her mind, and then when she puts it together, I'm like kind of like clay for her. It's like because she knows that when she puts something together that it's a little bit creative for her, but she knows that I'll wear it, and we have a lot of fun with it. So
Perfect. That's a
that's where it all
win-win.
stems from.
yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to ask you also about obviously you're kind of known for your dedication to fitness and running and you run that LA Kings fitness club right out of Redondo.
Right.
And so when you were playing in the NHL in the 80s, was that important? Were guys committed to fitness back then or not so much?
I think I was maybe a little bit ahead of my curve, and I think some of that comes from being a player of smaller stature, and especially growing up. I was a defenseman growing up, so I had to make sure that I had some assets that were difference makers to make up for the 6 inches of height or 7 inches of height or maybe 40 or 50 pounds of weight. So things that I could control were my skating. So I always put a lot of emphasis on my skating, and then in my conditioning. I was always a fitness type of person in the gym. I try to build my body up as much as I possibly could, be as strong as I physically could, so I could compete. whether it was junior and then eventually into the NHL when I became a forward and things like that. But yeah, it's something I've always prided myself in. My dad was always in good shape. He played. Uh, he was in the Brooklyn Dodgers organization. Never played for the big team,
Oh, wow.
but then after stopped playing ball, he played religiously. Played handball a couple of times a week, and always kept himself in good shape. So I think he was a great role model. He set a great stage for me to be able to kind of follow. And I know at the end of my career, when I stepped away from hockey, I kind of got out of that workout routine. But now religiously for about the last 35 years, I've gone, right back into it, and it's a routine for me now. It's I don't even consider it a workout. I've run every day for the last 13 years.
Wow.
Every day, I haven't missed a day. I've jumped rope every day for 9 years. I do push-ups every day, and this year I threw crunches into my routine. So I put together a workout that I can do anywhere in any climate. I don't need a gym. So and I'm afraid if I stop doing it, I might be a sumo wrestler.
So you run every day for 13 years. That is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, a little over 20,000 miles.
Because it's not like you're in Florida all year long. I mean, you're running out.
No, I walk out the front door of a hotel in Winnipeg in middle of December or January. I got my shorts on. They're looking at me like there's something wrong with me, and I probably agree with them. There probably is something wrong with me, but but I go for my run and I come back.
That is amazing. Yeah, I would just think, man, I would be afraid to just, I don't know, hit some ice and go down
Well,
hard.
I've done that.
Never get
I've
up.
slipped. I fell through some water. I went through
Oh,
was in the
whoa.
water in Winnipeg. It
Oh,
happens.
Well, that's an inspiration. I better get out and go for a run
I
tomorrow.
know, it makes me feel super lazy.
Wow. So, if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, I'd like to get in shape, but I have no idea how to start. I mean, what would you say?
I would just say that the easiest thing to do, and I know, like what we just talked about, it sounds like overwhelming and things like that. Like, oh my God, that's crazy. Commit to 5 minutes a day. We all have 5 minutes. Everybody says, well, I haven't got time, my job, my this, my that. Excuses. Don't make any excuses. So you've got 5 minutes. So take 5 minutes and pick 3 or 4 exercises that you can run through 2 or 3 times. Again, start small. You want to set attainable goals. If you set attainable goals, you'll never fail. And you'll find that after you do those things, small amounts, again, whether it's, you can do a few like, squats, you can, do some jumping jacks, some sit-ups, whatever you want to do, just some easy things to get going. And then you'll evolve. You'll eventually grow from it. Your body will want you to do it more. 30, 60 days in, now you've established a new habit. The habit that you had not working out, your habit now is working out, and it becomes a part of your lifestyle. When I first started doing jump rope, I couldn't even, I thought I was going to hang myself the first time when I was doing it. The rope was going all over the place. So I set myself a goal of doing 1,500 a day. I wanted to do a 500,000 for the year. So it became 1,500 a day, got to be 540,000 or whatever the number was. But I would do sets of 100, and I do like 15 sets of 100. And it seemed like it was taking me forever. By the end of the year, I was doing 1,500 jumps in about 8 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then 3 years ago, my goal just continually kept, getting a little bit further along. And 3 years ago, I ended up jumping 6.1 million jumps in a year. And it was the equivalent of jumping 30 days every second of the day.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So just, yeah, the thing is just to get in the
But
gym and set attainable goals.
set attainable goals. Again, pick, 2, 3, 4 exercises, ones that aren't over strenuous, and just get your body in the mode. You got to activate your body. And once it's activated, you get your metabolism going. You're going to find it'll drive you to want to do more. And then you'll just, you'll see different little things. You'll be watching things and you go, okay, and you'll talk to different people. What do you do? What do you do? Boom, boom, boom. And then, you manage your diet a little bit as well.
That's
So
great.
start with 5 minutes a day, an attainable goal. Set an attainable goal. You'll never fail.
Excellent.
And write it down. Write it down on a piece of
Yeah.
paper, or put it in your computers or whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, I still look forward to the end of the day going and write down what I did that day, and
No,
it's
cool.
just it's a pat in the back for yourself.
Fantastic. Tim, you got a question?
Yeah, getting back to the game last night, you know, uh, just with so Draisaitl scoring there with like I think like 29 seconds left in the second. I think they still only had like 8 shots on goal. It was pretty much all Kings. What do you think led to their pushback? Do you think the Kings eased off a little? Do you think the Oilers just got going? A little bit of both.
Yeah, I think when you look at the game, when the Kings started the game, they didn't expect to be up 4-0.
Right.
You know the Edmonton Oilers are going to get their chances. You got two world-class players and McDavid and Draisaitl, also with a great supporting cast as well. You look at Hyman the year before, he scored 50 plus goals, so the pushback's coming. 12 minutes into the period is when the Oilers got their first shot on goal in the second period. At that point, they only had 6 shots on goal. That goal at the end of the period comes with under 5 seconds left. And it was a big boost for Edmonton. A lot of people, especially in LA, are saying should have been a penalty against Kopitar. He got kind of tugged at and pulled around, but of course, it wasn't called. So, you got to continue to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
So that goal gave them a big boost. I thought the goal, though, or pardon me, the goal coming when it did, wasn't going to be as bad for the Kings because they'd had the intermission to go in and hit the reset button.
Mhm.
And in turn, the Oilers were the team to come out in the third period, and it gave them the life that they were looking for. And then they got another goal to make it 4-2. Then the Kings make it 5-2 with the power play goal, and you figure, okay, Kings are back in control, they're in charge. But Oilers answered quickly, made it 5-3. And then they get the 5-on-3 advantage for 2 minutes,
Yeah.
and Fiala hits the goal post. They had
Yeah.
a couple of great looks,
They
but
did.
it didn't go in. I thought after that point, I thought the King, I don't want to say they pulled back, but they weren't as aggressive up ice
Mhm.
as they were in the early part of the game. And that allowed McDavid, Draisaitl underneath the play to generate speed. And now Edmonton was starting to spend more time in the offensive zone. And at that point, Edmonton, they had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're gonna sit there and they're just gonna try to outgun you. And more times than not, they're gonna beat you in that situation. Um, and then when it got down to a couple few minutes left and it's still 5-3, I thought the Kings, they took the shot. They had a couple of shots at the empty net, missed it. And because they weren't doing well in the face-off circle, I thought it would have been better for the Kings try to just chip pucks out as opposed to going for the empty net. Because every time it went to the empty net, they missed. That allowed the Oilers to get some rest. McDavid and Draisaitl, I think Draisaitl, somebody said, played almost 5.5 minutes of the last 6 minutes of the game.
Wow.
They just never went off the ice
Yeah.
because of all the whistles and stoppages and things like that. So they kept missing the net. So I would have. It's almost like when you look at basketball, you want to keep the clock running. That's the only thing that's going to hurt you. Like if you start playing the game at the free throw line in basketball, yeah, a team could catch up, 15 points in 10, 15 seconds if you keep taking fouls. So stay away from the fouls, keep the clock running. I thought that's one thing that the Kings didn't manage well. And I think is something,
Yeah.
and Jim Hiller talked a little bit about it today, was, that they maybe pull back a little bit in the neutral zone. But again, you expect to push back from Edmonton, and but they did. They found a way. So, and that's the main thing. I think that speaks to the character of the hockey club, that how they were able to regather themselves and come back. Be it they got a break on their goal, but they still found a way to win.
Why do you think that philosophy has changed? Because it seemed like in the 80s and 90s it was a cardinal sin to try to hit the empty net if you ice the puck. And I don't know when that switch happened, but now it seems like everybody's trying to hit the empty net from wherever they are on the ice all the time.
Yeah, it's something that actually every team practices now. You see guys, shooting the puck from the far end of the rink, and everybody's a lot more accurate with with their shooting, and comes from the way that they're brought up. Being, at that time it was a 2-goal lead, and so you're trying to. I understand it with the 2-goal lead. One goal, I don't think the Kings would have been shooting the puck. I think they would have been chipping it out. So it was almost a curse that they were up by a couple as opposed to being up by just one. I think the Kings would have probably approached it a little bit differently. But they had their chances at that empty net. We've seen it through the course of the year. A number of times those guys have scored on those shots, and it just didn't happen. And I think though if the same scenario comes about tomorrow night, you'll probably see a little bit different approach to the execution at the end of the game.
Yeah, hopefully, because that all those icings, like you said, it just gave them a chance to rest
Yeah.
and keep Draisaitl and McDavid out there, and
Mhm.
Yep.
yeah, whew. Well,
Were you?
hopefully tomorrow night's game won't be quite as heart attack inducing.
Yeah.
You know what? If the result's the same, so be it. I'll sign up now.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. You were down there at center ice for the late game challenge. Did you see anything or hear anything if the puck hit the glass
You know, it
or
was
whatnot?
so hard, and I remember looking up and because I would keep my eye on like normally I'll kind of peek my head out along the boards a little bit more, but I kept myself back a little bit more last night, and I did not see anything. I did not see anything hit the glass. And again, I'm not saying my eyes saw it, but when the puck went up, I kind of lost it up in lights, as it went over. Definitely didn't hear anything. Of course, I've got my headset on, but
Oh, man.
I didn't hear anything, and immediately it wasn't like a collectively as a group that the group said, hey, bang, that one hit the glass. So there was some doubt in some of their minds, and maybe like, hey, let's take a shot at it. And they took a look at it on their monitor on the bench. So there was no doubt it was close, and probably one of those things that but because the referees initially called it out, you've got to find enough evidence to overturn your initial call.
Mhm.
The longer that it went, I think that's where I think it favored the Kings because now they're looking extra hard. One thing I'd like to see, and not because of last night's call on that, but when it comes to reviewing something, maybe you put a 30-second time, or maybe it's a minute, whatever it is. There's a time limit because after a period of time, you're trying to convince yourself to overturn, or find something. If
Yeah.
it doesn't jump out at you, it's probably not there because I never want to take away the human element and you know judge what the referees are seeing out there. Yeah, of course we all miss something, and if it's blatant, it would have been seen like, oh my God, like I remember the one Jonathan Quick that went off the back net in Detroit that one year and hit him in the
Yeah.
back of the head.
We still talk about
If
that.
they would have replayed that, they would have said, oh my God, there it is, boom, boom, hit the netting up there, and boom, they would have bang, it's called like that. So that's just one thing I like to see. The officials just be able to make that, or not the officials, but just when they're reviewing something like that, to put within a time limit that we didn't see or we did see, and that's it.
Especially with the offsides challenges, because some of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are just getting, I mean,
yeah.
Pretty
they're
ridiculous.
like 10 minutes long, sometimes.
No, it's way too long. And again, we're looking at some. We might be looking at like an eighth of an inch. And
Mhm.
if we slowed the game down, we could probably call 10 more calls if we wanted to. But
Yeah.
because it happens on a goal, we're looking at it, and I don't think of a player an eighth of an inch ahead of their skate in. And it could be up to 2 minutes before on that play that had anything to do
Yeah.
with that goal. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah, that's another
I,
thing that I always find so
yeah,
frustrating. Like, if the team gains the zone and they hold it in for like 90
yeah.
seconds and then it comes,
Yeah, they've had 7 shots on goal and go, like
Yeah.
I see on the initial rush, like if it's a rush and the guy goes in and you sit there and go, well, that sure looked like offside. I agree with you. Okay, bang, he was in, even if it is eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch, that's offside. It's off the rush. It's a direct attack. He's at the net. But when the play goes by and there's been shots on goal and things like that, it's just,
exactly, yeah. It almost seems like to me that if the defending team has touched the puck and has a chance to clear it and don't get it clear,
yeah,
then to
yeah,
me it almost seems like it should just reset that zone entry.
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
that would change the whole game maybe. So maybe you couldn't do that.
Oh, yeah.
That would open up a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, when you
Yep,
see that,
that it would.
that situation where you got, yeah, like you said, 7 shots on goal and you've had a
Yeah,
check going for a minute and a half and that comes back. It's just,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess, it's designed, for the times that somebody missed a really blatant offsides, which you don't want to have that
Well,
happen either. But
yeah.
some of these ones that are getting overturned, like you said, it's just coming down to like millimeters.
Yeah. And like when you see goals that, let's say, like you see, oh, I think that puck went in, and you'll see, well, the play will continue because the referee's like, he's waving, no goal, and the play goes on. And then the red light will go on at center because in Toronto,
Mhm.
they saw it,
Yeah.
they had conclusive evidence that it went in. And once that red light goes on, the referee blows a whistle and bang, bang. And I like that fact that,
Mhm.
they saw it was blatant, and, away we go.
Yeah, and they usually get on it right away. So you're skating
Yeah.
to
Oh,
give
yeah.
away,
Right away.
you hear the
Yeah. Yeah.
bullhorn going off, and oh, okay, well, that was a
Yeah.
goal,
Yeah.
and everybody seems to be okay with it. But
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so what do you think we're going to see in game two tomorrow?
Well, I think the Kings would like to come out the same way that they did, very aggressive and strong. Play a very direct north and south game. They want to take away the time and space of McDavid and Draisaitl, limit their shots. I think one thing that really played to the Kings' favor was the penalty situation, stay out of the box. The Oilers have destroyed the Kings in the special teams in the last 3 years. They've had 25 power play goals in the last 3 years against the Kings 10. Last night, the Kings connect twice in the power play and they kill both Oilers, penalties. So I think that plays a big factor again. And I know Edmonton, they're going to try to push the envelope, and it's the Kings are going to, they're going to have to smother. When the Kings are at their best, they check to win, and if they check well again tomorrow, they're going to put themselves in a good spot to take a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, that would be so huge, to
Yeah,
win those two games because it seems like of these four meetings, the Kings have won game one three times now, right?
I believe so. Yes.
So it
Yeah.
hasn't always been, and they've won them on the road. So usually,
Yeah.
when the road team gets a game one, it kind of is supposed to flip the series a bit, but it hasn't
Yeah.
worked out that way. So
The big difference this year is though the Kings play on home ice.
yeah.
They had 31 wins, which is the franchise best, tied for the most home wins in the league with, I believe it was Carolina had 31 as well. So there's definitely a different feel about playing at home. And I think when the opposition come into Crypto.com Arena, they sense that, whether it's the energy in the building, whatever it is, there's a little something that jumps out at you. Go like, oh, gee, this team only lost 6 games in this building at home all year. It's like, something, and then you find yourself behind, a couple and you get caught up in a moment. So, that's one thing that why I don't want to say expect, but why people can expect to see a different team and and maybe and hopefully a different result
Mhm.
from the Kings standpoint is that they do have that home ice advantage.
Yeah. Tim, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about, the kind of slogan for this playoff has been built for this, and the Kings did go out and get a team, kind of geared for the Oilers and playing them more physical. Do you think they were as physical as they needed to be in this game?
Well, physicality comes upon the game. You don't want to get caught too much up in that. I know there's a lot of energy, a lot of adrenaline flowing. In the off season last year, I thought Rob Blake, coaches, management, ownership, they did a really good job at assessing what they needed. They went out and acquired glue players as opposed to big name free agents. Edmondson, a cup winner with St. Louis, Kemper, a cup winner with Colorado, Jeannot, a physical player, big body even though he's not in the lineup right now. Fogel, guy who's a wealth of playoff experience with the Edmonton Oilers, and then even Burrows, a physical player with plays with an edge, and then at the deadline bringing in Kuzmenko, the skill that they're looking for. So they're definitely built different than they were. They're deeper than they've ever been.
Mhm.
And then the emergence of young players. Byfield's taken his game to another level. LaFerriere, you look at what he's been able to contribute. And then back on the blue line, Clark and Spence, because of the injury to Doughty, those guys got some valuable learning time in the early part of the year. So they're definitely a different team than they were in the past three playoffs against the Edmonton Oilers. And they are more physical, but they're not a team that's going to run you through the boards. Very similar to like the Kings in 212. Everybody said the Kings were so hard to play against, tough to play against, and it wasn't the big booming checks they put you in the row three. They just played heavy and they just wore on you. They just wear you down. And I think that's what they're going to, attempt to do in this run this year again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with this current playoff format, good teams get bounced in the first round.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
why not the Oilers this time, huh?
Yeah.
Eight good teams are going down in the first round. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
I
it's
was going
just
to ask you, do you like the way it's set up now, or do you kind of miss the 1 through 8 days?
yeah, the 1 through 8, even 1 through 16. You go right from top to bottom. I mean, I know it travel wise, it's a little bit more challenging, but the way these teams travel today with the charter flights and things like that. I mean, might be nice to mix it up as opposed to playing the same teams every year. But uh, you know, what the league has got right now is parity. The parity in the
Mhm.
NHL is phenomenal. I mean, on any given night, even the teams that are at the bottom. They're going to beat you. I mean, I look at the games that the Kings played this year. The difficulty they had with San Jose. San Jose, played them well all year, and Kings never beat Calgary all year.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you how good the league is. You've
Yeah.
got to be your best, and we all know that everybody's hot or cold at some time. You've got injuries, scheduling. Whether you might be playing your fifth game in 8 days, the other team's been off for 3 days. I mean that it happens to every team. So that's what makes it so interesting, night in and night out.
Well, I guess it does create the excitement, right
Yeah.
from round one, because they're huge series right from the go. And I guess maybe in the past with 1 through 8, you might have had kind of a sleepy series where there was maybe a 7 seed that, wasn't really in the same league with the 2 seed, and
Yeah.
they'd get swept. And, I was thinking about it. It's like, it's kind of rare to see sweeps in the first
Yeah.
round,
Yeah,
because
that's true.
Yeah, and if you go back to like the beginning of the year, a lot of people had, either Colorado or Dallas to win the cup, and they're playing
Yeah.
each other in the first
yeah,
round. So that one of them's not happening.
Yeah.
that's the thing. When you think, wow, either the Stars or the Avs are going to be golfing soon, it kind of seems,
Yep.
well, unfair, but
Yeah.
that's just the
Yeah.
way it is.
Tampa,
And it's
Tampa
it's
Bay
like
Yeah.
that
Florida.
in both conferences. It's like that
Yeah.
when Toronto's got to play Tampa every year,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really not an easy. There's just not an easy round anymore.
No, there isn't. No.
So whoever wins it is just the best team at the best, getting hot at the best time.
It's the most grueling trophy to win for sure.
Exactly. That's why we love it so much. Thanks, Daryl, for joining us. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Pleasure, guys.
I'm
That's
sure you've
fantastic.
got other things to do and get prepped up for game 2, but have a good broadcast tomorrow, and hopefully the Kings will be going up to Edmonton up 2-0.
All right, guys. You guys keep up the great work, and we look forward to catching up with you again as we move on.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Awesome.
All right, guys.